If I told you that the most electrifying moment of my life, the one that made me feel more alive than I ever thought possible, wasn't with my husband, Mike, would you judge me? Would you hate me for it? Maybe you'd understand, or maybe not. Regardless, you deserve to know the truth. Here's my story. My name is Sarah, and on the outside, my life looks perfect. I'm 36 years old, married to Mike for 12 years. He's a good man, steady, hardworking, dependable. Together, we've built a comfortable life in a quiet suburb near Denver, Colorado. We have 2 kids, a golden retriever named Max, and a house with a white picket fence. To anyone who saw us at the grocery store or PTA meetings, we probably seem like we have it all. But beneath the surface, things aren't what they appear. Our marriage has been on autopilot for years. We stopped being us somewhere along the way. Mike and I became more like roommates than a married couple, sharing responsibilities, but not intimacy. The spark that once set my heart racing has long since faded, leaving only a faint ember barely warm. I never planned for any of this. I always thought I was loyal, even when times were tough. But 2024 changed everything. That year, someone or something shattered my predictable, controlled life, and made me feel things I hadn't felt in years. It wasn't supposed to mean anything, but it did. More than I ever imagined. This is where my story begins the year I crossed a line. I can't uncross and discovered who I really was. It all started on a normal Tuesday in May. The kind of day that could easily be forgotten. I had just dropped the kids off at school and was heading to grab a coffee before work. The coffee shop was busier than usual. And as I stood in line scrolling through my phone, I felt someone's eyes on me. "Long line today, huh?" A deep, warm voice broke my train of thought. I looked up and saw him. He had dark hair with a touch of gray, enough to give him a distinguished look. His smile was confident, easy, and somehow disarming. He was dressed casually in a button-down shirt and jeans. But there was something about him that made him stand out. "Yeah, this place always seems crowded when you're in a rush," I replied, offering a polite smile. We exchanged a few more words, small talk at first. But there was something about the way he looked at me, as though I were the only person in the room. It had been years since anyone had looked at me like that. Before I knew it, we were standing at the counter ordering our drinks. He introduced himself as Jason, a marketing consultant who had recently moved to town. I told him I was an office manager and, almost reflexively, mentioned my husband and kids as if to remind myself and him of the boundaries between us. "Nice to meet you, Sarah," he said, his eyes lingering on mine for just a moment longer than necessary. "Maybe I'll see you around." I nodded, feeling a strange flutter in my chest as I grabbed my coffee and left. That should have been the end of it, a fleeting moment with a stranger. But it wasn't. The next week, I saw him again at the same coffee shop. He waved me over to his table, and though I hesitated, I joined him. We spent nearly an hour talking, laughing, and sharing stories. For the first time in a long while, I felt seen not just as a wife or mother, but as me. That became our routine. Every Tuesday morning, we met at the coffee shop. For an hour, I was someone lighter, freer, and more alive. Little did I know, those conversations were the beginning of something I couldn't stop. Even if I wanted to. If someone had told me months earlier that I would be here now, recounting the events of that fateful night, I would have laughed in disbelief. But here I am with no way to deny the truth. That night, the night that changed everything, started like any other Tuesday. I dropped the kids off, ran errands, and went to the coffee shop, where I met Jason as usual. But that day, he seemed different, distracted, even nervous. "Are you okay?" I asked, stirring my latte. "Yeah, just a lot on my mind," he replied. For the first time, Jason opened up about his life, how he had moved to town after a messy divorce, how much he missed his kids, and how lonely the transition had been. His vulnerability caught me off guard. I had always thought of him as someone who had it all together. Then he said something unexpected. "I don't know what I'd do without these talks. Sarah, you make this place feel less lonely. His words hung between us, and for the first time, I realized how dangerous this was becoming. But instead of pulling away, I leaned in. Later that week, Jason texted me. We had never exchanged numbers before, but he must have found me in the work directory. The message was simple. Would you like to grab dinner sometime? I stared at the message for what felt like hours, knowing exactly what it meant and what it could lead to. Part of me wanted to delete it and forget everything, but another part, the louder, more restless part, told me to say yes. And so I did. On Friday night, I told Mike I had a work event. It wasn't the first time I'd lied, but this lie felt different, bigger, more real. Jason picked me up a mile from the house, and as I slid into his car, I felt a mix of excitement and fear. We drove to a quiet restaurant on the outskirts of town. The conversation flowed easily, but there was an unspoken tension and undeniable pull between us that neither of us acknowledged aloud. After dinner, Jason suggested we take a drive. There's a spot I know, he said. It's quiet and the view is amazing. I should have said no. I should have stopped it right there, but instead I nodded. The spot was a secluded clearing overlooking the city. The lights twinkled in the distance. The air was cool, and for a moment, everything else seemed to fade away. Jason turned to me. I don't want to ruin what we have, but I can't keep pretending I don't feel this way about you. My heart skipped a beat. I knew this moment was coming, but hearing him say it made it real. Comma. I feel it too. I whispered, and then he kissed me. It wasn't like the kisses I'd shared with Mike over the years, quick. Routine, obligatory. This kiss was full of passion, longing, and a kind of desperation I hadn't felt in years. It made me forget everything I had to lose. We didn't stop there. That night in Jason's car, everything changed. It wasn't some fairy tale moment, but it was raw, real, and intense. For the first time in years, I felt wanted, alive. Jason made me feel like a woman. Again, not just a wife or a mother. Afterward, guilt crept in. But so did the realization that nothing would ever be the same. I had crossed a line I couldn't uncross. When I got home that night, Mike was asleep on the couch, the TV still on. I stood there, staring at him, feeling a sharp pang of guilt, but also something else. Something I hadn't felt in years. I felt alive, and that scared me more than anything else. They say secrets unravel everything, but mine didn't. I kept everything under control. At least I told myself I did. Jason and I continued meeting in secret. My life with Mike remained routine. He never questioned anything. I had become a master at living two separate lives. Then one day, Jason and I went to the mountains for a day trip. We spent the day by a lake, laughing, talking, and holding each other close. It felt like something out of a dream, but deep down, I knew it couldn't last. As the year went on, I clung to those moments with Jason more and more. They became my escape, my sanctuary. But as 2025 arrived, I couldn't help but wonder, would my best moment of the year come from my husband? Mike? I wanted to believe it could. But deep down, I wasn't sure. Because once you've experienced something that makes you feel so alive, how can you ever go back to the way things were before? I hope this revision captures the essence of the story with clarity while maintaining its emotional depth. Let me know if you'd like any further adjustments.